Well, I grew up where I still live, in Highgate, which is in a way suburbia. I mean, it's on the edge of London, and all of my images do relate to my childhood in some way. The house I grew up in, the sort of often when I'm choosing colours for a set or choosing, directing an actress to kind of perform, I'll sort of, think of something like a Sunday night at my house with my mum, and the dinner's on the floor and the TV's too loud and somebody's screaming at someone, just normal suburban stuff. And of course it all goes on behind those kind of closed doors of the exteriors that Todd's photographed. So the marriage of Todd's exteriors and these interiors of mine, they feel really, really truthful, because of course all that sort of screaming and shouting and madness. I mean, certainly my childhood was like that. It all goes on behind these very sort of pristine, prim, net curtains with roses growing in front of them. So when I saw David Lynch's Blue Velvet and it explained all that to me, I suddenly felt, oh, now I get it. This is what life is really like. But until then, I was just like, wow, it's so weird.
What about you?
And for me, it's very much. I mean, the work, all my work, kind of like previous to this last book I just released, was very much like about my childhood and about revisiting the past and about cruising my old neighborhood and actually literally going back to where I came from exactly to photograph, and then also finding places that looked very much like that or reminded me of that. And so there's something about that, and I worked on that for 20 years, which is kind of interesting. Like there's several different books. I have like 6 books of like something that had to do with that, and so it's very much, I mean, that impetus to like sort of tell your own story, or like, even though it was not directly, wasn't directly saying this is my life, I was very much, but it is, a lot, it's plucked right out of, like, I could have, like, my house is very much just like that house right there, and it could have been, that could be my house, and so it's rooted in the suburbs and in my past for sure.
Okay. What is it about? I mean, what is it about suburbia that makes it so fascinating for artists across the board, whether it's a filmmaker or a photographer or a painter? I think
it's childhood that is what is interesting to people, and people telling their own story, like from a caveman drawing on the wall to like Kendrick Lamar like writing one of the last couple of records, the record about Compton, like all that. If you listen to that, it's all his life, his story, and then to even like. Many artists have used their childhood as a place, but I think that like we just have this weird need to share or say something about what happened in our lives, and that other people have commonalities, and therefore they all come together.
Yeah.
So, and they recognize that.
Yeah, it's interesting how we're both artists working with the camera, and instead of photographing, what you're meant to photograph with the camera, what's sort of right in front of you, kind of go into our sort of our minds and our memories and photograph our memories, and in my sense I rebuild them. In your sense, you kind of sort of scout them out.
I find them.
But yeah, I think the cameras, the camera can be used for many things, to record many things. But I think it works best when it's recording something so impossible to record as child, as memory. How do you catch a memory? How do you snatch it? How do you put it in a bottle and lock it up? Show it to other people.
One of the last questions I was going to ask kind of relates to that, so I'll ask that now, which is that there's a look of cinema in all of your work, and I'll come on to that specifically in a second. But how do you view the relationship between cinema and photography, and where does the narrative fall in that? Which is a bit like you were saying, the reference.
The thing that I've always said is like there's a Lewis Baltz quote that I've always loved, and it goes like this. It says, "Photography is the profound corner that sits in between literature and film." And so if you think about that, that's really fascinating, because it's this thing that's like, it doesn't speak, it doesn't move, there's no sound, it's silent. What are you going to do with that? How can you speak? That's quite a challenge to use that as your tool. And I like that very much. I like the fact that photography can't speak or move. And so I find, and there's something about that makes us wonder a lot. We have to engage it, and I also have always said that the meaning of the image resides in the viewer. And I think that we all bring in, we all fill things in. It's interesting in my pictures, if you look at them, where you can't see anything through the windows at all. My pictures are totally unstaged, natural light, just me and a tripod driving around at night at 15 miles an hour, like cruising for looking in the suburbs, like, you know, like just like finding things. I remember I found this. There's a neighborhood I found near San Francisco. That's where I live, and. When I went to graduate school there, I found this neighborhood that was this is very specific, but like Levittown, New York, is the first suburb in America, and it was built by the same builders that made this neighborhood all the way out in California, which is really strange. And architecture is the thing that makes you remember. You know, like it's that paneling on the wall, or that siding on the house, or that shape of that window, or the shape of that house. That's the stuff that gets you, like, for me, those are the details that bring me right back exactly to where I was coming from. So the architecture actually matters a lot.
They tell the story in a way.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a point about that that I think about a lot, which is that, because, I mean, me and Todd, I think we both get asked the same question, which is, you know, when will you ever make a film? And Todd, you told me at lunch you never will, and I always say, well, maybe next year. But you know, what I realized from studying cinema a lot, because I really have, is that films are more interesting when you understand what's going on, and photographs actually, I think, are more interesting when you don't understand what's going on. And it's I can't figure that out. How I make a film? If I made a film where you don't understand what's going on, maybe no one will watch it. You know, I think it's highly likely.
There is a delicious
that's the problem. You know,
I think image and not knowing.
I think cinema, you need to resolve it. You need to understand. You need to have a conclusion, and it needs to. This is there because of that, and it makes sense. But with photography, it's beautiful when you just have these objects floating around, and you try and piece it together. And as you said rightly, you know, most of the work is done in the viewer's head.
But is that more true of you, Todd, than you, Miles? I mean, Miles, yours are more sort of overtly scenes that you've set up on stage. Do you set about making them with some kind of narrative in mind at least, or not? Are they meant to be completely ambiguous?
Yeah, I have the sort of luxury of working as a director in a way, and I do. People who know my work know that I do drawings, and I do drawings like a storyboard, and I kind of figure out. But I'm not. I have the luxury of not having it need to make sense. So I'm making this movie where I'm work in a kind of surrealist way, like there's going to be a close-up and there's going to be a mid-shot and a wide shot and then like zoom into this. But it doesn't have to kind of join up and make sense. That's the difference I have with compared to a filmmaker.
And for me too, it doesn't have to make sense. But there's one thing that actually my wife and I have this debate all the time, that I say that all photographs are narrative and there's no way out of that. You know, especially if you have two of them and they're like anywhere near each other, it's like you cannot have narrative. But I'm deeply I can't stop moving them around and sequencing them and making something out of it. And so I think that
and books are great for that. I mean, books I think are one of the great art forms for that sort of.
Yeah, and I'm a bookmaker, like a first, before I'm a photographer on the wall. And I love making them. And I have, I think, 12 different, or 13, maybe 13 publications that I made, like little ones, big ones, and it's just really, I love doing the process, sequencing, the process of storytelling, of creating a fictional narrative.
Because as you say, when you put two images together, they can't help but speak to each other, and that's what, of course, what we've done today. With this picture.
Going back to the idea of cinema, obviously you're very indebted to it, both of you. Although in a more subtle way with Todd, as I found out earlier, and perhaps you can elaborate on that in a second. But David Lynch and Hitchcock obviously come to mind as great directors that are associated with Suburbia and the American Dream and the American Nightmare in some cases. Can you sort of talk me through your personal encounters with cinema and their work and how that's influenced you, Miles, perhaps?
Sure. I mean, I've always wanted to be a director, I can say that without any embarrassment. And as John Lennon said famously, you often end up doing the thing you're the second best at in life. So there it is. But
never heard that.
But while trying to be a film director, I succeeded being a pop video director. And my way of dealing with that was spending hours and hours and days and weeks at the Scala Cinema and the Everyman Cinema, absorbing all foreign films, all American 60s, 70s films, everything by Pasolini, Antonioni, Truffaut, Godard. I just, watched triple bills. They weren't double bills, they were triple bills. And I would sit in there for the long haul and watch, 9 hours of cinema with a coffee and a croissant, and come out, and I would have a script written on the back of a serviette for a pop video, and it's basically going to be The Shining, you know what I mean? And I learned a lot about production by doing that, because I realized, you want a long corridor and somebody with a steady cam running down the corridor, you're not going to get it on a pop video budget. So, but I was a real amateur in that respect. I really love filmmaking, and in a kind of guerrilla way, tried to make these films with my pop videos, but they sucked really bad, to be honest with you. And then photography came along and whisked me up, and I just didn't, it seemed such an easier course, less stress, and I had a much better reaction to the work. Yeah. So that's how I learned about cinema. I had to, as my way of figuring out pop video scripts.
But Todd, because you look at yours, you think the same things, but I understand it's like...
Yeah, for me, like my experience with that is that I made one video, and after I was totally finished with it, I was like, I could have made an entire monograph with the energy that went into just editing this thing for 4 minutes. It was like
3 minutes
unbelievable.
Is so long,
oh my God, forever. And it was, and I literally was like, I would be better served just making a monograph, and so that's what I just kept on doing. It's just was like, and so so basically, because I needed all those pictures, like I needed hundreds of little pictures, like to make it all work.
Yeah.
And it was for the Ravenettes, if you want to know. It was a video for the Ravenettes, but and there's a couple of moments that are actually really awesome, but like but cinema for me is actually like something that, believe it or not, like I haven't watched. I've not like you. Yeah, I'm not a cinephile, and I'm a book person and a photo book person. I have a library of like 6,000 photo books, and that's where my inspiration is. Like I've got suitcases full of them at my hotel, like taking them back to America from Paris, which I've been doing for years and years. But also like. But I will say, and what's interesting, I had an assistant, Amanda Bow, for a long while. After I'd done my houses most of my houses at night, and she was like, "You have to watch Twin Peaks. Like, you just watch it." And I'm like, because I always fall asleep when I sit down. And so basically, if I'm alone and I sit down, I'm like, I'm done. It doesn't matter what's in front of me. So basically, I watched it, the whole thing, slowly but surely, after I made all of the work that you know of.
And after, isn't it? Yeah.
And it was amazing, and it was really inspiring, and it was amazing, and the things that people had always said, like, oh, David Lynch, is really, you must be inspired by him, and like, and now I know why,
Right.
And then.
Maybe you had the same kind of childhood, probably.
Yeah, we probably did. I mean, we honestly probably did.
Yeah.
Like growing up in America, small town America, and
Exactly.
like it's like Montana, and like I think you grew up in Montana, like and Ohio. They're not that different.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say is that there's something I think that where the cinematic quality of my work comes from is that it comes from like the light that happens, and the work on the walls here, it's at night.
Yeah.
And nighttime is like mysterious, and nighttime is, there's something that I don't know how, but I've got this knack for like capturing this extended moment that you don't know where it's going or coming from, and that's what makes it feel like cinematic. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do it with no lights, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, I just find the lights that's there. Yeah. So, and I prefer to just find what I photograph.
Has anyone ever come out of their house and said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, one time was I was in Reno, Nevada, and this guy he came out of the house and he was pulling his pants up and he was running towards me, and then he was like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were my girl's ex-husband.
Oh.
And he said, I'm sorry to scare you. And then he just went back in the house, and I was like, okay.
Oh, right.
That was close, you know. But it was all good. That's really the only time everything's ever
I mean, I'd be
happened like
scared
that.
shooting in these parts of America.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's curious. I mean, yeah. Things have different. Well, now it's so different. Like I would probably be scared right now.
Yeah.
But because people
Just have to wear a red hat, maybe.
Yeah, if I get a red hat,
Disguise
I'll be
yourself.
just fine. Yeah, that's what you do. Yeah. But anyway, but I have my. The police do come sometimes and they check it out, and then and they realize that you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything illegal. It's just you're just. I never go on anybody's property ever when I'm taking pictures. I just stand on the street. That's why I have that cool distance. You know, like that sort of like objective distance. You know. Yeah.
What about the policeman who critiqued your work?
Oh, there was one cop that was. He said, "Well, you know what? I don't know what you're up to, but." But my wife's an artist, and she would never paint that.
Guys, that might be quite a good.
Yeah, let's end there.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
okay. Thank you very much.